We're going to start today with my money line picks and best bets for week 3 of the 2025 NFL season. We already have multiple backup quarterbacks playing. One game where will be exclusive backup quarterbacks playing, and it's only week 3. So, as I've been saying for years in the NFL, the three most important positions in football, it's not the offensive line. It's not the defensive line. As much as I value line play, and you guys know that, especially when it comes to betting, the NFL really comes down to three things: quarterback, backup quarterback, and kicker. Because the majority of the time you take the better quarterback to win, you're going to win the game. And backup quarterback, with as many quarterbacks we have playing in the NFL now, there are 32 teams. Over half of them, I would say at least three-fourths of them go to their backup. We have about 70 quarterbacks playing per season. And then most of these games are one possession game that comes down to if a soccer player can take a ball and kick it through in between two goalposts. Essentially, that's what football comes down to. Now, there are a lot of 0-2 teams this week trying to save their season. There are some teams that played absolutely horrendous in week 2 that are trying to bounce back. And that's what I'm going to put my best bets on today. Are going to be mostly either a 1-1 team that has not played great or that lost in week 2 that needs to bounce back, or an 0-2 team that we think are good teams that need to win this week to save their season. Without further ado, let's dive right into it because Thursday night we have Dolphins at the Bills. Bills are favored by 11.5. If you really think this is a blowout the way I think it could be and want to wet your beak, you can take Buffalo minus 11.5. I think there are better lines on the board, but I think the Dolphins season, they looked defeated week 1 against the Indianapolis Colts. Now, they did bounce back in week 2. They played well against the New England Patriots in the second half. They just could not squeak out the victory. Milton Williams gets the big sack. Miami's offensive line has been overwhelmed the past few seasons. Buffalo has dominated Miami. Remember last Thursday night in Miami last year, week 2, the game Tua Tagovailoa got hurt and Buffalo wiped them out in that game as well. I think it could be pretty similar here. Yes, the Dolphins are 0-2. Yes, their season is on the line, but we don't feel like the Dolphins are a good team. I think this could be a runaway train here from Buffalo. James Cook is picked up right where he left off after his hold in. He's had a great start to the season. Josh Allen is already in MVP form. I'd be shocked, to put it that way, if Buffalo loses this game. And I know there's heavy consideration there to pick them in the survivor pool this week. Then we have the Rams at the Eagles. The Eagles are favored by 3.5. This is a rematch of the divisional round from last year where the Rams gave the Eagles their best playoff game. Remember, Philadelphia was up 2 touchdowns with 4 minutes left, and it came down to the sack by Jalen Carter. These are two 2-0 teams. The Rams did not play well in week 1 against the Texans, but then they took apart the Titans in the second half to pull away. Meanwhile, Philadelphia eked out wins against the Cowboys at home and the Chiefs on the road in the Super Bowl rematch. Listen, there's a lot of conversation about Saquon Barkley, what he did in 2 games against the Rams last year. I think the Rams are going to try to focus on Saquon Barkley, who has not had yet that explosive run, which really started in week 3, if you think about it, last year. That run against the Saints when the Eagles were down 3-0 in the fourth quarter. Saquon Barkley at that point completely changed the game. We'll see if Dallas Goedert plays. That is a huge loss for this Eagles offense. They're not the same without Dallas Goedert in there, providing another versatile weapon at tight end. I've said it multiple times. I'm not concerned about the passing game with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. The Eagles are just going to give you body blows. Saquon Barkley, Saquon Barkley, Saquon Barkley. Defense are playing a lot of zone. They're keeping their eyes on the receivers. Eventually, they're going to get Saquon Barkley loose, and when that happens, that will open up A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. I said it a lot, where this Philadelphia team may be like last year's Chiefs team, where you think about them as explosive plays, but they don't really have a lot of explosive plays. They're a lot of body blows. but they have the receivers, unlike Kansas City does. For the Rams, Puka Nacua has picked up right where he left off last year. They still need to get Devontae Adams going. Kyron Williams is putting up his normal stats. Jared Verse, Brandon Fisk out of Florida State are getting back to the quarterback. The spread's about right. I think it's another close game for my Eagles. I think the Rams going from the West to the East Coast one more time, back to back weeks, is not a great spot. I do like that for Philadelphia in their favor. I think the Eagles have the better offensive line. I think they have the better defensive line. I think that wins the game. I'll take Philly. Again, I'm not going to bet it. Then we have the Packers at the Browns. Now, the Packers are going to win this game. The question is going to be by how much. Do the Browns, after getting embarrassed by the Baltimore Ravens, do they come out? Do they play better at home? Are they just a better home team than they are a road team? Packers have a 10-day rest coming off Thursday Night Football. They go into Cleveland where Micah Parsons and Rashawn Gary and all those guys are going to really test the Browns' offensive line. Joe Flacco has been throwing balls about 1 yard past the line of scrimmage to Harold Fannin and Dylan Sampson. Now Quinshon Judkins is the number one starting running back for the Browns. Did not provide them any juice in week 3. Listen, the Browns need to make a quarterback change. Joe Flacco is not the future. I've been saying it over and over again. I've called this Packers team a Super Bowl team since last year's draft, even before the Michael Parsons edition. They have been a wagon for the first 2 weeks of the season. Again, I think there's better bets on the board, but if you want to wet your beat with a big spread this week, this is the one to take. Take the Green Bay side. I'm not going to, but I like the Packers to win. Then we have Jake Browning against Carson Wentz. There's no way I touch this game because I don't know what to expect on either side. This is why I say that predictions in the NFL before the season are mostly pointless because nobody would have predicted for it to be Jake Browning and Carson Wentz in week 3 in this game. I think the tiebreaker here and why I think the Vikings are going to win this game is because they looked embarrassed on Sunday Night Football. They got worked by the Atlanta Falcons offensive line. When you were on national television and you get embarrassed, you usually come back and you play your best football the next week. Cincinnati is 2-0. I think there's pressure on Jake Browning to play well. I don't think there's pressure on Jake Browning necessarily to win this game. Again, he played well 2 years ago when Joe Burrow was out with injury. It seems like him, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, they all do have a good connection. I'm interested to see if they do run the football more with Chase Brown. We know Brian Flores is one of the best defensive coordinators in football. He's going to be changing up a lot of looks to confuse the young quarterback. I think Carson Wentz got a lot of great coaching the last couple of years from Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco, from Sean McVay in Los Angeles, to Andy Reid in Kansas City. Now he's with Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota. Again, with those weapons that the Vikings have, I do expect Carson Wentz to play well against the Bengals defense, who was better than last year, but they still don't have the most talented names, but they are opportunistic this year with turnovers. I still think the Vikings win the game. My first bet on the board here. I'm taking Pittsburgh minus 1.5. I think they win. I think they cover. I think they bounce back against the Patriots. You remember week 3 last year? It was Patriots at Jets. That was the Thursday night game. That was the best game Aaron Rodgers played in a Jets uniform. The defense under Mike Vrabel has not changed that much outside of their free agent acquisitions. And yes, New England put up 33 points, but it was against the Dolphins defense who gave up an historic score on 10 straight drives to begin the season. This is not Anthony Weaver's defense. This is Mike Tomlin's defense in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh looked really bad. A lot of people are making fun of them for not knowing the special teams rules. Aaron Rodgers was not on the same page with his receivers. New England's DBs have been beat up the first 2 weeks of the season. And quite frankly, again, the Raiders and Dolphins, Geno Smith and Tua, move the ball. Aaron Rodgers, to me, is a lot better quarterback than those guys. I think this is a game that DK Metcalf could finally get involved. And again, the Steelers were embarrassed last week at home against Seattle. I don't see Pittsburgh dropping 2 in a row here. I like them to cover. And basically, unless you think this is a 1 point game, take whatever side you think is going to win the game. I think that's the Steelers. Then, I'll be honest with you here. It's very tempting to take Tampa minus 6.5. I don't know what the Jets quarterback situation is with Justin Fields, But I do remember last year in week three, Denver went into Tampa when they were 0-2 and knocked off the Bucks. The Jets are 0-2. Aaron Glenn's going to be a desperate football team. Aaron Glenn played this Bucks team a lot when he was the Lions defensive coordinator and did a pretty good job against Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. The Buccaneers won that game. Remember last year in week two, it was like 20-16 or something. And Tampa's offense did not look great against Houston, and they have not played well, especially in the first half, in either of their first two wins, though they have been incredible second half comebacks. Tampa, they have Philadelphia on deck, so this could be a look ahead spot for them. But again, depending on who the Jets quarterback is, I think they're going to blitz. The Jets have two young tackles. Todd Bowles making his return to New York, where he was a former head coach. Now he's back there with the Bucks or against his former team, the Jets. This game is in Tampa, but I think the Bucks potentially roll here. I could see blowout. I just don't have the cojones to take the 6.5 right now. Atlanta at Carolina. This is make it or break it for Bryce Young. The fact that the Falcons are favored by 5.5 on the road against a divisional opponent tells me that Vegas thinks Atlanta is the way better team. We saw the linebacker out of Georgia and the defensive end out of Tennessee, um, James Pierce, those two draft picks Atlanta had in the first round. They came through in a big way, dominated the Vikings offensive line and the Carolina Panthers offensive line, especially with Minnesota's injuries, is probably just as good, if not worse. Bryce Young and the Panthers offense has only done good in no huddle and mostly garbage time when the Arizona Cardinals tried to give away the game in week two. Bryce Young is not the Bryce Young we saw at the end of last year. He's the Bryce Young we saw at the beginning of last year. And I think Michael Penix, the way he gets the ball out quickly, Carolina is not going to have a lot of time to rush the passer. And I think Atlanta could again win this game comfortably. I think there's better lines on the board. I like the Raiders in an upset here. Now, the Commanders are favored by 3.5. I like Vegas to go into Washington. I know there's a rest advantage here. Washington, 10 days rest. Vegas, 6 days rest because they played Monday night. That does worry me a little bit. But it sounds like Marcus Mariota is going to be playing in this game for the Commanders. Jaden Daniels is out. I don't think Pete Carroll or Chip Kelly, especially knowing Chip Kelly, knowing Marcus Mariota from their days together at Oregon, I don't think they're going to take this Commanders offense lightly. I think the Raiders played their worst game against the Chargers, and they were still somewhat in it. I mean, the Chargers just could not put the Raiders away. You could see Pete Carroll's infectious energy already coming through this team. And the Commanders, yes, they were embarrassed Thursday night, but they did not play well in week one against the Giants, really either. They've sort of slow mode through this season. The offense has not been connecting really till late in games. And again, this is Marcus Mariota back there, not Jane Daniels. I expect Pete Carroll to hold the box. I expect Patrick Graham, the defensive coordinator, to bring more blitzes. And I like Vegas here. Again, don't feel confident enough to bet it like the Colts last week against Denver. I like the pick. I didn't feel strong enough to bet it. That's kind of how I feel here. Now, Cam Ward's got to prove something to me. The Colts could start off 3-0, which nobody would have predicted to start the season. They defeat Miami in week one, they defeat Denver in week two. Both those games were at home. This is their first game on the road. We'll see if Tennessee's defense, who kept the game close in the first half and relatively close in week one against Denver, if they can do the same here against Indianapolis. The Colts offensive line has played better than many expected, I think, for the first 2 weeks of the season. They have mostly kept Daniel Jones clean, and the Colts were moving it up and down the field on a Denver defense that was second or third in scoring last year. And the Tennessee Titans are certainly not that. They're in a rebuild. Cam Ward has had a play or two every single week. That's been a highlight play, especially his play on Sunday when he escaped the pocket, got outside, made that incredible throw for a touchdown near the end of the first half. But his completion percentage is very low. He's completing about 50% of his passes. It has not been pretty for them in the passing game. I think the Colts' new defensive coordinator, Lou Anarumo, as much as he struggled in Cincinnati, he's going to be good against a young quarterback. Tennessee has historically done very well against the Colts, But this Colts team feels different this year. Right now, they feel like the best team in the AFC South. I'm going to pick them to win. My other bet in the 1 o'clock window is my cousin is a huge Texans fan. I'm going to take them plus 1.5. I think at 0-2 now, this is their season. I would not have thought that going into the year because I thought the AFC South would be down. But Trevor Lawrence, even though the Jaguars lost that game to the Bengals last week, he has looked like the Trevor Lawrence in year two with Doug Peterson at the helm as opposed to the Trevor Lawrence we saw last year. The Jaguars are playing very good football and they're getting after the quarterback for the first time in years, which does worry me because we know the Texans' biggest weakness is offensive line. But in that division with Cam Ward, Trevor Lawrence, CJ Stroud, Daniel Jones at quarterback, CJ Stroud is clearly, in terms of talent, the best quarterback. The Texans still have all those weapons with Nico Collins. The two wide receivers they drafted out of Iowa State have not necessarily popped yet. And the running game outside of the one touchdown with Nick Chubb, which I do believe Tampa Bay let Houston score to give themselves a chance to win the game, has not looked great. But I think the Texans are too talented of a team, especially on defense, to let this talent go to waste. I don't think they're a bad team. I think, they've had two tough NFC games to start the year. Rams and Bucks, which are two perennial contenders in that conference. I think being in a division game, they've gone to Jacksonville before. They're comfortable with it. I think that defense slows down Jacksonville's offense just enough. It could be a high scoring game. It could be like 27-24, but I got Houston winning. Then, I do think if the Chargers win this game, they are in the catbird seat to go on to win the division. They'd be 3-0 in the division, knocking off Kansas City and Brazil, Vegas on the road, and then the Broncos at home. So they played three division games in three different locations, and they could end up going 3-0. And even with the Rashawn Slater injury, Joe Alt played left tackle at Notre Dame. She's transitioned back there seamlessly. Mekhi Becton, a good at right guard. Zion Johnson's getting better at left guard every single year he's been in the league. This Chargers offensive line looks like it's right up there with Philadelphia this year as the best offensive line in football. Keenan Allen has returned back to his form that he was with the Chargers all those years before he went to Chicago. When McConkey's giving you production, Quentin Johnson all of a sudden is learning how to catch and separate. And these Chargers look dangerous and one of the best teams in football. And Denver, for the first 2 weeks, they've taken on two AFC South teams and the Titans and the Colts. They're 1-1, and their defense in particular has not looked great in either game. And Bo Nix has struggled with turnovers. Jesse Minter has been one of the best defensive coordinators in the league since coming in last year. I think the Chargers are the better football team. I think they win the game. I'm not going to bet it. Saints at Seahawks. The way Seattle's playing, I think this is the favorite for everybody going in to be their survivor pick this week against the Saints team who's just really bad. But they've competed in the first two games of the year. They've taken on NFC West teams at home in the Cardinals and the Niners, but now they have to go on the road to Seattle. It's a different animal for Spencer Rattler to go on the road in that crowd noise against a Seahawks team who played good defense week one against the Niners. And then Sam Darnold looked really good, shockingly to me, in Pittsburgh last week. He looked very comfortable. The Pittsburgh defense barely got a hand on Darnold. He moved the ball throughout the game. I think the Seahawks show why they're the better team here. Seattle's been a weird team that I haven't gotten a read on all year. I'll still feel that way. I don't know how to feel about them after 3 weeks. They should probably cover this. Again, I don't have the cojones to take it, but I like Seattle to win the game. Then we have Arizona at San Francisco, and Arizona has taken advantage of their schedule, right? They beat the Saints and the Panthers the first 2 weeks. They're 2-0. You can make an argument the Niners have done the same, defeating Seattle and New Orleans. They're 2-0. If the Rams lose to Philadelphia in the 1 o'clock window, this game here will be the early NFC West lead. And I think Arizona gets a break here. The fact they're favored by 1.5 on the road tells me Vegas believes in the Arizona Cardinals. It tells me that they don't think Mac Jones can replicate what he did against the Saints last week. Jonathan Gannon's defense, a lot of talent on it. They've added a lot of talent the last few years. The Niners passing game without George Kittle, Ricky Pearsall, and Jawan Jennings are obviously going to have to step up, but they're going up against Will Johnson and that Arizona Cardinals secondary, who has gotten a lot of rushing on the passer the first 2 weeks. Again, they are facing the Saints and the Panthers, but Arizona, outside of the fourth quarter last week against Carolina, has looked really good. I picked them to be a playoff team this year. I think they start off the year 3-0. I think they go into San Francisco. I think they win the game. So there's only 3 games left on the schedule, and I've made two best bets out of five. So you know I'm betting the last 3 games. Let's start with the 425 game window featuring the Dallas Cowboys and the Chicago Bears with Tom Brady on the call, who I have no idea how he's allowed to be on the call after talking with Raiders coaches. Feels like a conflict of interest to me, especially when the Bears go to Vegas in week 4. But I'm taking the Bears to win. I'm taking them to cover the 1.5. I think the fact that they are 0-2 and they are favored, even though they're at home against a Cowboy team that it did take a Brandon Aubrey 64-yard field goal to get to overtime to defeat a Giants team that was desperate coming in. I think this tells you Vegas still believes in the Bears. They still think, like me, that they are a good team. There's no way, with all the hype the Bears got, they got more hype this offseason than they did last offseason, and they were very hyped last offseason. They cannot start 0-3 or the season's over. I said it before, the Bears will get rid of Caleb Williams before they get rid of Ben Johnson. Colin Cowherd from FS1 is on the record saying that the Ben Johnson Caleb Williams relationship does not work. We're going to find out Sunday because their season is on the line. Remember last year when the 0-2 Ravens went into Dallas and kickstarted their wagon and destroyed the Dallas Cowboys in week 3? I think that could be what happens here in Chicago. Caleb Williams has been very good early on. It's been the off script stuff where he's been struggling. I think they need to get the run game going with DeAndre Swift. That will open up opportunities for players like Rome Odunze and DJ Moore down the field. I am surprised they have not used Colston Loveland. They picked him 10th overall out of Michigan. He played about 2 snaps last week against the Detroit Lions. To me, they need to go more heavy. They need to use more backs. They need to look like more of a Ben Johnson offense. Again, maybe they're babysitting Caleb Williams the first couple of weeks of the season here against two divisional opponents. This is not a divisional opponent. This is a must win. I like the Bears. Then I've said it from jump, and I'm surprised this line's only 5.5. I thought it would be closer to what the Dolphins Bills or Packers Browns line is, but at 5.5, it's an easy take. Give me the Chiefs. I know Rashid Rice is not playing, obviously suspended. Xavier Worthy may not play, but to me it doesn't matter. The Giants have that great defensive line, and they've struggled to get after the quarterback, that being Jaden Daniels and Dak Prescott the first 2 weeks of the season. This is Patrick Mahomes. This is the Chiefs' season on the line. There is no way in hell Kansas City drops to 0-3. I think the Chiefs dismantle the Giants. I'll be honest with you. I like the Chiefs in a rout. I think it's the lock of the week. I think they easily cover 5.5. Now, Lions at the Ravens. Baltimore is favored by 5.5. I think they cover it. If you guys remember, I believe it was 3 years ago, the Lions went into Baltimore, the Ravens kicked their tail in. And what scares me if you're a Lions fan, yes, they did put up 52 points last week, but it was against the Bears defense that so far this season has been Swiss cheese. The Baltimore Ravens are angry, even though they beat the Browns because Derrick Henry only had 22 yards. That's not going to happen again. We know Lamar Jackson's historic success against the NFC. I believe the only two teams he's lost to in the NFC so far are the Eagles and the Giants, believe it or not. I think Lamar continues to be incredible. I think Jared Goff is a different quarterback outdoors versus indoors at this point, weather being albeit a factor. I don't see the Lions finding a way to stop Derrick Henry again. I think he's going to run angry. I think the Ravens win by at least a touchdown, but I think this has a chance to be a real rout. I'm very comfortable taking Baltimore minus 5.5. So last week we went 13-3 in the money line. Let's see if we can do it again. Along with we went 3 for 5 in best bets for the first 2 weeks of the season. That puts us at 6 for 10. 60%. One of these weeks, I'd like to hit a 5 for 5 week. I feel really good about my picks this week. To recap, I like Buffalo over Miami, Philly over the Rams, Green Bay over Cleveland, Minnesota over Cincinnati, Pittsburgh over New England, Tampa over the Jets, Atlanta over Carolina, Vegas over Washington, Indy over Tennessee, Houston over Jacksonville, Chargers over Denver, Seattle over New Orleans, Arizona over San Francisco, Chicago over Dallas, Kansas City over the Giants, and Baltimore over Detroit. My five best bets for week three of the 2025 NFL season are: I like the Steelers to win and cover on the road, the 1.5 against the New England Patriots. I like the Texans plus 1.5. I think they go on the road in a divisional environment. They're 0-2. They're a more desperate team against the Jaguars. I think the Bears at 0-2. They're a desperate team. They cover 1.5 at home against the Cowboys. I think Kansas City at 0-2. They're a desperate team. They go on the road Sunday night. They win at the Giants. And then Baltimore, I think -5.5. I think Derrick Henry runs very angry after having only 22 yards last week. I think the Ravens cover 5.5 against the Detroit Lions. Like that clip from the Brandsworth podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brandsworth podcast right here on YouTube.